So it's lesson 2, part 2 of advanced web programming. This video is going to be fairly short. We're just going to do one more little exercise with our JS bin, one more practice with arrays, then I'm going to give you guys your lab. Just before I do, was pointed out to me by, is it Pretender? Okay. All right, I got one. I got a name right. There you go. So Pretender pointed out we weren't sure whether we needed to declare this, to initialize this variable as an empty string. If I take that out, we're going to try this again. So when we do this, notice we actually get the word undefined appearing every time, so before our first item. So we can see that initializing our variable in this case is a good idea. We don't get an error, but we don't really get the right result without initializing that as an empty string. So it was a good idea that we initialize that as empty.
I feel like the JavaScript design, the type and the assigning value.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's happening. Right? Because when we give it this, that's right, it can infer the type of string, but when we don't declare, we don't give it any value, it has no idea what the type is going to be. All right, so one more exercise for you. And this one's on Blackboard. So here we've actually got a two-dimensional array. So I've given you an array called foods, and then within each food, we have 3 different types of food: sushi, tacos, and pizza. And within each one of those elements, we have a nested array that has the different ingredients within that. Okay? So this line of code, you can copy and paste that into JS bin. You don't have to recreate the array. You can use the array as I've created it. But what I want you to do is you need to use a loop, or you may need 2 loops in order to create the entire list in this format. So it should show the first food item, and you don't have to use these food items, although you can if you want to. And then underneath, you should see each ingredient, and this list of ingredients should be tabbed. So you can use this \T to insert a tab character. So we want to declare the array this way, but have it display in this format. Do you have a question?
Yes, like the data type is never constant. Whenever we assign something to a variable, it changes the data type. That's
right. It's not constant because it's just implicit. It's assumed, but it's not explicit because it's not, JavaScript is not strongly typed. So I want you to take this array, dump it into your JS bin, and use a loop or perhaps 2 loops in order to generate this output. I want you to try and do that now. If you're stuck, you might want to start with a loop that prints everything. For starters, just print out the contents of the array or all of the food items without the ingredients for starters. Once you get that working, that gives you something to work with. We're on the right track. Just get it to print out the array first if you need to. Print the whole thing. Well, that's not the right name of the array, right? The array is called roots. So that's where you're getting that. access individual elements. Okay. You're getting close to it. So what you do, though, if you look at the example, let's go back to Blackboard. I actually want you to format it this way. So each individual element is on a new line and it's indented underneath the food. Okay, so you're close. You're on the, what you've got is good. Okay, you're getting there as well. So format it. So we want it to be like this. Okay, so you're on the right. What you have will help you, but you need to do a little. You just need to keep working with it. Okay, well, with foods, remember, that's the entire array. So you need to specify which element in the array you want to log out. Yep, so I'll put the example back. So we want the output to have this structure. And then the second food. So this is the structure we want to give it. So every element will be on its own line. Yeah. There you go. Well, you haven't fixed the numbers, right? You use length each time.
No, I mean for.
Oh, here, I'll use 0?
0.
No, because the name of the food's always going to be first.
So like if we know the format.
If you know the form, if you know the format, yep, that looks good. That's a good solution. There are a few other ways of different ways of doing it, but yeah, we're going to need to, because we do need to know the difference, whether it's a food or whether it's an ingredient, because the food are to the left and the ingredients are indented. The only way we'll know is by looking at position 0. So that's a good solution. All right, very good. Looks good. I have to think about that. Use for it, I'm not sure. I have to look that up, I'm not sure. Yeah, try it. We don't use it much because generally that's used when we have a strongly typed, like a typed collection of objects, which in this case we don't because JavaScript is untyped. Try it and see, yeah, if you get it to work that way, sure. Right, so you need, now you'll need 2 loops, right? There's one loop which gets these, and then you need a second loop because there's obviously different numbers of ingredients. So you'll need a nested loop. So this would be, so the internal array, right? If you create a variable for the internal array, that would be I, 1. So if you create that as a separate array inside your loop, then you can get the length of that array. So if you had, say, an ingredients array that was equal to I, 1, then you could access ingredients. You're on the right track. It's a nested 2D array. You can assume the food will always be first. That's the structure. The food will always be first, and the ingredients will always be after. It would make no sense to have the ingredients first and the food at the end. Well, I want you to create that structure based on this array declaration.
This one's fixed for this type of one point. That's why I made it right? Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. Okay. Yeah, this. Well, clear the console and just do that. What do you get from here? Yeah.
But this one is almost hard.
Well, it's okay to hard code the position that's going to be first and the ingredients will be position 1. That's fine because it follows that structure. It will always follow that structure. So that's okay. The array is not going to be structured differently.
Yeah, because that's sometimes some people type a little weird, and then the second half will decide sushi.
Yeah, but probably we're going to pull something like this. When we're working with Node, we're going to pull it out as a JSON object. So it's going to be, the data is going to look like this. Right, all our data is going to have that format when we're working in Node. So that's going to be consistent. Or we have related data nested inside as a sub array. So I think we're safe to assume that format's okay. And it's generally going to be auto-generated, not typed by a user. It's going to be generated automatically. Okay, I'll give you a couple more minutes to kick this around. I've noticed some people have gotten it finished. And we can review it together. Okay, so you're on the right track now. So all you need to do now is output these one at a time on a new line. I'll put the format back up. So we want it to display this way. Okay, so you're close. So what you're going to need is you're going to need an nested loop. We'll need 2 for loops. Right? So you've got the first one, but you want to break the values you have in that second array and display them in another loop. So this is going to need to go inside of that one, right? Because we're going to loop through these, display this, and then this, and then our next loop. Well, it would just be foods I0. You've got 3 dimensions, there's really only 2. Did it work with for each? All right, I just want to review. There are a few different ways we can do this. The simplest way is probably with a nested two for loops, one nested inside of the other. So our top level loop should be fairly simple. How would we access first just the foods in a loop? Okay, so we'll do. We'll create a for loop, and what would we do inside of here so that we can display those values? It's going to be foods I, and then 0. Because I will represent which element, so which subarray, and then position 0, the name of the food's always going to be at position 0. So this should give us sushi, tacos, and pizza. So here we go. So we're getting the first element of each subarray. And we can assume that the first element is always going to be that. Is it possible somebody could be typing up this array data? Yes, but probably not. Typically that array, JavaScript array, is going to be something we query from our database. Remember, we talked about last week when we're using a database like MongoDB, the data we get back, it comes in that JavaScript array format, which is called what? Right, JSON, JavaScript object notation. So this is what all of our data is going to look like. So we can count on the consistency that the food item is always going to be first. So now, how, after each food item, how do we then print out the ingredient? And there's different numbers of ingredients in each food. Cindy, how'd you do it?
Oh, for the ingredient, yeah, another loop.
Okay.
But with J instead of I.
Okay.
And you go make it 0.
Yep.
Semicolon, J less than foods at I.
Yep.
At 1. Like.
So we know that the second element is always an array. We just don't know how many elements are in that ingredients array. Okay. So what would we do now inside of that array? Yep. Sorry, foods I, 1J. Out when we want the tab. Then we'll append on the name. Let's try that and see how it works. So we get sushi, and then we get an indented list of the ingredients. Then our next food. So that's a good solution. So one loop inside of the other. Now there are a few different ways we could do this. Another way we could do this is we could assign this item, our sub-array, into a variable. So we could do something like this. Another version would look something like this. I could say, I could create another array called ingredients, and then I could just loop to and then I could use ingredients J. So I'm creating a variable that represents this list each time. We'll try it this way. See what we get if we do it this way. So foods I0 is the name, food name, and foods I1 is the ingredient subarray. Right. Whoops, sorry. That should be. Well, I still need my loop. My mistake. My loop just going to look different. Thank you. So from J0. Yeah, I just wanted to comment the whole. Right. I get the same output. This version's maybe a little more readable. We have to use less of the brackets, and we don't need the I1J, which works fine. Nothing wrong with it. Okay. So, sorry, you had foods. It was like this. And that was how we had it before. And it was prob, right? You used the for each loop, which is another way of doing it.
This is for like the nested loop, like nested array that looks like this one. But if you use if and else, like separate the first item and then the rest of it, and we can use it for other arrays also.
Yeah, although typically this is what our JavaScript data is going to look like. This is a pretty good representation of what JavaScript data will look like. For example, let me just show you. So here is an API that I've been working with integrating integrating on a web application I wrote a long time ago with another application where we're sending data back and forth. So here's a representation of what gets sent. So you can see the arrays nested. So we have a single key and value here, but then we have a subarray with keys and values. So that's typically what our JavaScript data is going to look like. It will be nested. Sorry? Looks like PHP? Well, this is JavaScript. It's JSON. So this is what all our data in this course, it's all going to look like this. So it's a key value pairs, but we don't do relationships. We don't do foreign keys, primary keys, joins. We simply nest one set of data inside of another set. Let's give you another example. Actually, let me go back here for a minute. So this would be another example. right? It's all nested.
But see, this has like 3, 4 elements. We are just printing to 0 and 1. If you use if and else, then we can print the whole of the same code.
Yeah, we could do it that way as well. So it depends whether we know the structure or whether we don't know the structure. In some cases, we won't know the structure of the data. In others, like for example, in this one, we're always going to know. I know the data is always like this because this is a specification for an API by another developer. And that developer said to me, here's what I need. I always want the data in that exact format. So I know I can format my data this way. In fact, I have to format it this way in order for his API to work. Okay, I will put all of this code up for you on GitHub. I think I did remove some of the stuff we did right at the beginning with var and let, although you can see that on the video stream. Okay, so I'll push this up on GitHub. I'm going to give you your lab. You actually can do your lab now. That way you don't have to take it home and do it. So here are the instructions for the lab. And I did update that document. So it's under the assignments tab. So this lab, it's based on, you can just follow that link to Code Academy. What I want you to do is create a rock, paper, scissors game using JavaScript. Okay? So you're going to ask the user to choose rock, paper, or scissors. They just type it in. And then you're going to use a random math function to generate the computer's choice, rock, paper, or scissors. And then you need to use if else to compare who wins. Did the user win? Did the computer win? Or was it a tie? And you'll output an appropriate message saying who the winner of the game is. So you can just follow it. So all you have to do, you actually can code the whole thing online. You don't have to use JSBin. You can do it right here on their site. Just follow the instructions on the left. It will also give you hints if anything's wrong. And to submit the lab, all you need to do at the end, you'll have all of your code typed in this window. So just copy all of your code, paste it into a lab2.js file, and upload it to GitHub and submit the link to your GitHub repository on Blackboard. Question?
What does this do?
Friday night at midnight. But I'm going to give you the rest of the class. That's it for the lesson. So if you do it now, chances are some of you will be able to get it finished before you go. Then you don't have anything to do. Sure. So I'm going to stop the video stream now. I will push this code up to GitHub, and you can just follow the link, do the lab, get your game working, and then just copy and paste, submit your file, put your file on GitHub, and send me the link. You have until Friday night to do it.